Sup guys? Check out this perfect Janus holding her phone with both her little hands. In this video, I'll be covering the 9th Chinese server anniversary event starring two new Ironblood URs,
Götz von Berlichingen,
Gvon Berling, and U-2501. Starting with GVB, she is a ship with a very clear identity, and one that we've seen before. She has the exact same gimmick as UVH in having half the cooldown of a regular battleship, while dealing slightly more than half damage per salvo. What makes her different, though, is that we're in 2026 now, so her stats and buffs are much higher, meaning her raw damage output exceeds even that of the strongest battleships in the game, like Lion and Mecklenburg. Yes, that's right, her damage output is currently the highest in the game, although in compositions where you want to get off all your attacks within certain timing windows when buffs are active, her identity of firing twice as often might become a double-edged sword and reduce her effective damage output. Something I was a little thrown off by was her crit buff condition. I mean, I guess it won't work against enemies that spawn the moment her first shells start to land, but why not just make it permanent? It just seems like more work for all parties involved, for not much of a difference in practice. She also has +1 main gun capacity, which has been a staple for UR battleships since Alsace, which makes running 3 battleship fleets a lot more convenient than in days of old. In addition to her top-of-the-line damage output, she also has an 8% universal damage debuff against a single enemy after she's finished loading. There isn't a duration stated, so it's safe to assume that it's permanent once it's applied. It is a bit ambiguous though as to whether the next time she's done reloading, another enemy target is selected, or if the same enemy could be selected twice. In any case, this makes her an even bigger powerhouse in bossing fleets, but it's not very effective in campaign, where there tends to be a lot of threats alive simultaneously. Speaking of campaign, she runs into the exact same issues as UVH, where her 45% damage reduction stacks additively with the out of ammo debuff, meaning she actually deals 5% damage when out of ammo, essentially becoming a dead slot, so you'll want to avoid using her in a situation where you could run out of ammo at all costs. She'll still perform well in boss fleets, where she's much less likely to run into ammo issues, but battleships that carry the mob fleet are much more desirable for campaign, seeing as Musashi is still top 2 for the job after all these years, while battleships for other roles have been powercraft many times over. There was some discussion before I woke up on the night of the update about whether her barrage was supposed to fire 8 or 16 shells, and currently it seems to fire 8. I didn't really follow the whole situation, but I don't really think she needs the 16 shells as she's already the highest damaging ship in the game with the 8 shell barrage. Looking at her design, which is quite plain in my opinion, reminiscent of the base Drake design, I don't think she deserves any more than this. On the other hand, in my unbiased opinion, Janus deserves a unique augment and a UR retrofit that makes her at least as strong as Z52, if not stronger. In terms of synergies, she's another incredibly flexible ship like Lion that doesn't demand anything at all of her teammates. Mecklenburg does want another Ironblood main fleet partner, and GVB is definitely going to be better at that than Bismarck's Y. Of course, you can run Bismarck in the last slot to buff both of them, but at this point, Bismarck's faction buffs are quite weak due to buffing only firepower, torpedo, and anti-air, where 2 of the 3 stats are essentially wasted on Ironblood ships, especially battleships. I think that in almost all cases, with the exception of when Bismarck's black hole is necessary to gather all the enemies together, running GVB and Mecklenburg with Lion should be better than Bismarck's Y in a battleship bossing fleet, due to Lion's higher damage contribution, not to mention Bismarck's lack of extra main gun capacity that makes running 3 battleships a lot more convenient. They should really retroactively add that to all the Rainbow battleships at this point. Another interesting synergy to consider is damage bonuses, not to be confused with damage taken increase debuffs, as damage bonuses would stack additively with her 45% damage penalty. One of the most relevant examples is William D. Porter, who increases the flagship's damage dealt by 10%. This would bring GVB's damage dealt per salvo from 55% to 65%, which is an actual increase of over 18%. There may be other applications of this that I can't think of off the top of my head, but most of the ships that are typically used as buffers for battleships actually bring debuffs rather than buffs, so the likes of Plymouth Aurora and so on. William D. Porter is a rare exception to that. Something else she could potentially do is make Trafalgar's debuff permanent by triggering it every 10 seconds or so, which might increase Vanguard damage against a high evasion boss more than another battleship would, but it's not game-breaking by any means. There may be other obvious synergies that I'm missing off the top of my head since I haven't been super plugged in recently, but I'll probably discover them as I play with her. Since she fires twice as often, she won't be able to make full use of certain timed buffs from the likes of Alsace or even Trafalgar if she's not the flagship, or routes from carriers like Lexington, Implacable, and Nakhimov, but half her salvos will still benefit, which I think should be more than enough to make her a top pick in any bossing situation where battleships are not penalized. I think Eldritch will be a very common partner for GVB, increasing her consistency a lot by applying Eldritch's slow every salvo if used as the flagship. Overall, I think her power level is closer to that of Lion than anyone else. Whether it's above or below Lion, we'll have to wait until I actually use her a bit. Despite her impressive raw power, her gimmick comes with some shortcomings, which is something that the Lion does not concern herself with. In practice, I can see her being tied to the flagship position with Eldritch in the Vanguard for a lot of situations just for consistency's sake, which might not be the best possible option all the time. I'd probably say they're kind of like S+ tier, while Mecklenburg and Alsace are just a little bit below them. I think that's all I have to say for now for GVB, so let's move on. Next up is our second UR submarine, U-2501. Now, there isn't going to be a question of whether or not she's going to be meta relevant, as she's only the second UR submarine and expectedly lives up to the standard set by I-404. Her stats and buffs exceed even those of I-404, although I-404 brings some bonuses for the other submarines, unlike U-2501. Not only that, but unlike most Ironblood submarines, she doesn't ask that you use her with other Ironblood submarines for stat bonuses, so she can be used to her full potential alongside other individually strong submarines like I-404 and Flasher. Just like I-404, she is both free to obtain with no luck involved via the event shop, and also brings a 10% evasion debuff for all of your fleets, even if she's not called in, although this one only lasts 8 seconds and happens at 15 seconds, which you can't control. But in any case, she'll be useful even if you just leave her at level 1 in your submarine fleet and forget about her. Definitely try to obtain at least one copy of her, even if you don't care about submarines whatsoever. Things will get more interesting when we get 4 of these UR submarines, and we finally have to decide which one must be benched. Next up, we have ALDB Meta. Now, she is technically an SSR rarity light carrier, which is for some reason the only hull type where there are multiple SSR ships that are essentially UR level in power level or usefulness, with examples like Cowpens, Independence, and Unicorn. With that being said, ALDB Meta is not one of them, having a 6-plane loadout and sub 300 aviation, with nothing in her kit that really compensates for these shortcomings. Moving on, we have Prinz Moritz, who is my personal favorite design out of the new batch of ships, both in the base as well as her skin. I am a huge fan of the body jewelry. Doesn't this event overall kind of give Halloween vibes? Although we get swimsuits in December too, so this is nothing new. The art style here looks very familiar to me, but I just can't quite pinpoint who the artist is. If you think you're a ball knower, put your guess in the comments. In terms of her gameplay performance, she's a sister ship to Prince Heinrich, and just like her sisters and Howden Liu, she can use those smaller caliber arcing style guns, but not all large cruiser guns. In campaign, it'll be in her best interest to use one of those arcing guns to bypass enemy shields. The main thing that stands out about her is that she is extremely tanky, like Prince Eugen level tanky while still retaining solid damage due to her strong barrage, which triggers every 3 shots with an arcing gun. She's not going to be any stronger than a proper large cruiser like A-Gear, but she does look like she's probably as good as an older UR like Drake, although that's not a high bar to pass these days. As for the 2 SR destroyers, I didn't see anything worth mentioning gameplay-wise. We also do have a retrofit this update for Admiral Hipper. With the additional gun mount that she gained on top of her decent stats, and the upgraded skill 1 from her unique augment that most people probably forgot about, it looks to be one of the stronger retrofits relative to her base form. I would say she's now the strongest ship in her class, although that's not saying much. She is still just a middle-of-the-pack stat-stick SSR gold cruiser, but from where she started as a weak ship by elite standards to now, this is one hell of a glow-up. The last thing to cover is the gold pressure hull. It has the exact same use cases as the purple one, but it just has a few extra stat points. Higher than these numbers indicate, as it can be taken to plus 13 as a gold equipment. However, you would still only use it when your submarines needed to stay in range, as the extra points in torpedo will not make it outperform Oxytorp, or snorkel when you needed to reach certain oxygen breakpoints. Personally, I will upgrade this thing to plus 13, as I have a lot of spare plates lying around, but it is very, very low priority. Very low. One last thing I wanted to talk about was the Mogodor skin. It seems to have gone omega viral, kind of like the Kashino kimono skin from a while back. I've always seen Mogodor's over-the-top horniness as more of a gag and not a turn-on. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and losing some of my virility, but I have reasons to believe that is not the case. I think the skin is not only extremely in character, but also looks very good and polished, which I've come to expect at this point from Mimosa, who is also the artist for Janus and Shimanto if you didn't know. Just look at how cute and expressive her faces are here. It's inarguably a top-tier skin if we ignore the two big elephants in the room. Actually, those basketballs don't change anything. My only real gripe is that there is this one view in her live 2D where she actually looks very wholesome and beautiful, as you can see here, but we can't choose to use this scene as her character portrait in the dock. Having this as an option would have really sealed the deal on this skin for me. Okay, that's all for this update. There are so many good skins in this batch and the next that it's kind of motivating me to make some videos discussing skins. Oh yeah, one last thing. They made this top-up website where you can purchase gems and packages with discounts that you can't access directly in-game, so if you're going to juice up anyway, you might as well go through here. This is only available for the global version though. Sadly, I'm playing on the JP server, so no discounts for me. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.